The doctor's in. If you hadn't guessed already, we're gonna solder some stuff. It's exciting. Some time ago when we were going through my toolbox, I promised you we'd talk about this little guy right here. And I wish I had some around, but I don't. But all this is house wiring. In other words, like the kind of wiring that you would find to wire up inside of your house. It's stiff as opposed to braided wire. It's just one big thick gauge wire. It's not a bunch of them stranded together like you would find in most automotive applications. Well, quite simply, you take a piece of it and you just loop it around in a circle like this. Like I just used, I don't know what I used. I think I just wrapped it around, but I just bent it up so that it was in this shape, and I soldered two alligator clips to the end of it. So it really is that simple. And these alligator clips you can find at your local electronics store that sells a lot of that stuff. But then you got these two alligator clips. And these perform two functions. They'll hold the wires in place that you're soldering, and they will also act as a heat sink so that you don't melt other stuff. But I have this fan motor here. You'll like this one. In my pile of parts over there. This here is the bad fan motor out of the Overheat car, out of the Toyota Celica. Going through my parts over there, I found a working fan motor. Exact same thing. They're both made by Nippon Denso, but one says Toyota on the outside and the other just says Denso. That's interesting. So same company, same motor, same everything. Goes into the same enclosure. But the issue is the connectors. One is for Toyota, one is for Honda. So we have to take the Toyota one and put it on the Honda one. Let's do that. Tools you will need. Obviously, a soldering gun, a pair of side cutters or dikes, wire strippers, the handy tool I just showed you, obviously solder, and shrink tube. Now, yeah, I just realized I only have two sizes. I have this really small or I have this really big. I'm going to try the really big and see how it works out. I think the small is way too small. First, I'm going to make sure that these wires are of approximately the same length. And to be honest, they're almost identical in length. So where I cut them is not going to matter too much, but I want to get down far enough onto the connectors so that I got plenty of space. So we're just gonna, oh, there it looks good. And then this is the one we're gonna keep. So I'm gonna cut this one about in the same spot. This is the dead motor. That was the sound of it going into the trash can. All right, now we need to get, luckily, that was already damaged. So let's start by stripping some wires. Highly recommend a pair of wire strippers for this. I don't recommend using side cutters. Right tool for the right job always makes a huge bit of difference. And you just want, you know, just I've got like a ½ an inch here to go, maybe a little less. Strip the wires. Do the same for the wires on your connector. About the same amount. What you're looking for is about that much nice clean wires. Luckily, these are the same color. Yay! Okay. Most important part here is before you go to solder things together, put your shrink tube on. You forget to put your shrink tube on and now you'll regret it. You know, this will actually work. So I'm going to use it. If I do my solder joints nice and tight, I can use a smaller shrink tube. Just take the shrink tube, slide it over the wire, down about as far as you possibly can. You don't want any heat getting to it before you want heat. Now let's get you a close-up. This is where this little tool comes in very handy. You can just sort of slip the two wires together, like so. And just kind of weave them together, and then I just give just a little twist. Till I've got something that looks like that. Then I'll take my nice little holder, and this works really good on those small wires. And I'll try to position it like so. Now, this is rosin core solder, which means it has stuff to help it flow. That is a good thing. And now for the fun part. When I take my solder gun and turn it on, some of them have a little light. Make sure that light comes on. Alright, when I do my soldering, I will hold the solder gun, even when it's cold, like right next to the wire, and just sort of put it underneath like this. And I'll hold it there for a little bit and let it get all nice and toasty. Actually touch the other side of the wire, because when the wire's hot enough to melt the solder just bleeds right into it real nice. And this is a thicker gauge wire, so it might take a little bit of time for it to heat up. But once it does, you'll see that the solder goes in real nice. Is that hot enough? And that's what I'll do. Just every once in a while, I'll just check to see if it's hot enough by touching just a little bit of solder to the tip there. Because you really want the solder to go down into the wires, almost like welding. Try not to get a big gob of solder like what I have here. Because a good solder joint is nice and shiny. It's not dull. And I'm botching this solder joint, if I'm honest. I'm not really happy with it. Maybe I'll do better on the next one. There we go. Solder's going into the wires. I've done better. Take off my heat sink. As you can see, it's a pretty strong connection. This is a good electrical connection, actually. That's why I prefer to solder things rather than using anything else, especially for this fan motor. Now, my hope is that this shrink tube didn't shrink, which I think it did. Yep, it got a little warm and no longer wants to move. Well, that's disappointing. I have a plan, though. These connectors, you can actually pull wires out of the inside of them if you know what you're doing. And I'm going to slide another piece of shrink tube across the outside of this. And go get my pocket screwdriver. Or this little pick will do. Like an inner part here. Down inside the connector, you'll see a little tab, and you just push up on that little tab and you can pull on the wire and it should pull through. There you go. This little seal in here is something you do not want to damage. I'm actually going to slide it over the whole thing. Get it over this and then over this. And that'll be over all the wires. But in addition to that, I want some over my connections. The trick here is to use the right size shrink tube, because this stuff is way too big. And I'm probably going to have to resort to electrical tape, because I really don't think that it's going to shrink down enough to be an effective seal. It might. I have done this before. Squeezed off the ends. I don't recommend doing this with your bare fingers. I suppose something is better than nothing, but a good seal here is important, because you don't want air and moisture getting in here, because if it does, it can corrode the connection. So I'm going to finish with some electrical tape, which, if I'm honest, is not a very good seal. Electrical tape is not what I would consider something that I would want to use in a situation like this. Shrink tube, the right size shrink tube, is what you use. Now we want our wires to be as sealed as possible, so I am going to install some electrical tape, which is not very good at doing what I'm asking it to do here. If you're gonna do this, kids, don't do it like Eric the Car Guy, okay? Because I know some of you out there are gonna call me out on this. You just love to bring me down. That's okay. Good attention or bad attention is still attention. Yes, be sure to install the tape shiny side out. Yeah, that would be good. I've done better. I'm not proud of this by any stretch. I've already taken this one out. I might as well do the same with this one, since it'll be easier to slip the shrink tube over. Here's the thing, since I'm taking both of these out, I want to make sure that they both get back in their same slots, because if I hook this up backwards, it's going to blow air out instead of suck air in. So for the black wire, I'm just going to make a little scribe mark on this side to know that that side is the side that gets the black one. Alright, you remember how this works. Slide it together, give it a little twist. And actually, I don't even need this for these wires. Some wires just don't want to stay together. That one's a little better than the last one. I always unplug my solder gun after I'm done. Make sure that it doesn't start up again. Now let's put these back in our connector, and you'll note that there's like a little hole in this that is actually where the spade is supposed to go in and clip in. Remember, our black one went to our marked side, so that and that side, that and that side, you hear it click, because what this does is it helps lock it together. And sometimes when you go to disconnect things, you'll notice that these come apart. Looks like I did it right. And that's all back together. Let's see if this piece of shrink tube will go around the outside of this. And it won't. Too much stuff. But hey, we got plenty of electrical tape. I'm just trying to keep these together. Keep them from separating here. Not doing anything fancy, obviously. And there we go. Looks hackish, but I know it's a good electrical connection. Before I install it, I'm just going to test it. Make sure it works. There we go. I love it when a plan comes together. Well, as you can see, we have a cooling fan that works like it's supposed to now. And a Toyota that's going to stay... There it goes again. A Toyota that's going to stay cool this summer. Just basics on how to solder things together. I'm sorry I showed you in such a hack way. I wish I could give you perfection, but if I'm honest, perfection is something that doesn't often happen. You just keep trying for it. Anyway, I'm Eric the Car Guy. You can always visit me at EricTheCarGuy.com. Link is posted below. You can always add questions or comments to this video down below. Oh, yeah, and one more thing. Stay dirty.